Well, those that have been here for a while know that I would just love at this point to have a whiteboard up here and go into every intricate detail of what I'm about to tell you today, because that's kind of my spiritual gift, is teaching. And I like to go into every little minute detail, but I know that all of you here would just be snoozing away, and the sound of the snoring would be quite annoying to me, so I'm not going to try to do that to you today. But I am going to have to talk a little bit about some of the words in the passage that we're going to be dealing with today, because this is really the start of a 2 or 3 week series called The Authority of the Believer. And in that vein, today's message is going to be intersecting with God. And most people are going to be very unaware of the details in here, because these passages have been so totally mistranslated for the last several thousand years. It's very sad. And last week, I prefaced today's message and we explained authority. And that was in the sermon, The 4 Steps to Faith. And it was based upon the story of the centurion. And that was in Luke 7, 1 through 10. And this centurion, he recognized authority within Jesus. And he recognized it based upon him being a Roman, him being a centurion, and being in charge of people, and then also taking orders from his authority. So he saw the authority within Jesus, and he saw how it was utilized within Jesus' kingdom. And being a centurion, he knew that Jesus could just say a word and something would happen. Now, we as well, I would hope, understand authority, because we deal with authority of parents, teachers, our bosses, the military, the police, and other people. So we're used to dealing with authority on a physical or fleshly level. Now, we likewise should understand what I recognize and call a threat authority. Okay, what do I mean by that? A burglar, a murderer, someone who's coming to do harm, I call a threat authority, because they have authority of some type. Be it the authority of a gun or a knife or a gang or something that puts your authority as a person living in the United States who has freedoms. They put that authority at risk. Okay? So, since we seem to understand the fleshly order of authority, we should be able to recognize the spiritual authority as well. But the problem is, how is spiritual authority granted, and how do we recognize and how do we operate within it? It's going to take me several weeks to deal with these issues. But in order to understand these questions, we have to go all the way back into history. We have to go into the Bible's first book, Genesis. We have to go back into the Garden of Eden and put on our little magnifying glasses and read where God relates to us the story of the creation of man. Because this is where authority first originates. But unfortunately, like I said again, the story has not come down to us in a fashion that we can understand. And it's caused great misunderstanding within the body of believers and the world in general. It's been the cause of much confusion within mankind and has left most people with a feeling of hopelessness, futility, and despair. How many people out here know people that really have no clue as to what they are doing on the earth today? We've probably all met people like that in our life. They have no clue, and they're full of despair and full of disappointment because they feel like they haven't accomplished something, because they're viewing everything in a fleshly manner. In Genesis 1:26, if you want to turn over there, you can see what your Bible says. And Carol was amazed a couple of weeks ago because his Bible that he was reading didn't say anything close to what I was talking about. So yours may not say anything close to what I'm going to tell you today. But in the King James 1:26 it says, "Let us make man in our image and likeness." Okay? Now, image and likeness in Hebrew is Betzalmenu Kidnutenu. This means resemblance, both physically and spiritually in nature. So what we have here is God telling us that we are created in His exact spiritual and physical nature and image, whatever that means. And we'll find out what that means. Going on, Genesis 1:27. We see God creating Adam, whatever this is. And this is where you really have to pay attention of what is going on, because the translators have mistranslated this word Adam every last time. Okay? Because of this, it kind of makes you wonder why such an important piece of information that should have been available to mankind down through the generations, that should have given us strength and power, has been locked away. Why has this happened? Now then, I'm going to ask you a question, and I want you all to answer me if you've got a chance. Have any of you ever been taught anything about what the word Adam means? Just say it out. Do you have any idea? What does Adam mean? Nobody? Nobody's ever heard that sometimes it means red dirt? He created this thing called red dirt, or just a man, or something. They've totally missed what this is. They just kind of don't want to deal with it. Now then, this is one of the single most important words in the entire Bible. Now, you'll understand why. And without this knowledge about this one word, most people will never realize who they are or what they are to do upon the earth. They won't know what authority is because they don't know from where it originates or what it's to do. And it's tremendously sad that this has happened, and it's doomed generations to powerlessness and all sorts of other things. Now, Adam doesn't mean red dirt or just dirt or man or any kind of drivel that's been espoused. Adam is a compound word. Now, do y'all know what a compound word is? It's a word that has two parts to it that sticks together and then means something else. It means greater than the sum of the two component words that have been joined together as a general rule. Now, Hebrew is an interesting language in that you have a root and then you have prefixes or suffixes that stick onto it so that you understand that it's a present, past, future, or it has something to do with somebody or something. Well, the word Adam is this word, the aleph, the ah of Adam or Adam, is how you really pronounce it, is an aleph, and the root is dam. So you have ah and dam. Now, the root dam means blood, red blood, and that is how we get the word for red in Hebrew, Adom, because of the meaning of the root of the word. Now, if the root word means blood, what does this little prefix mean that's stuck on the front of it? So we know that God created some kind of blood here, and He called that blood Adam. But what was it? Okay? And also, how in the world did the translators ever get red dirt out of a root that means blood? It'll be a question for y'all to ponder this next week. Now, the real key to understanding this, what's happening at creation, is locked up within this little prefix. You see, Aleph is an abbreviation. And it's an interesting abbreviation because it's one of the only abbreviations in all of the Hebrew language that has two meanings. The first meaning is that it stands for Elohim, because the Aleph is the same word or same letter that starts the word Elohim. So they abbreviate Elohim with the little Aleph. So it stands for the plurality of God because Elohim is a plural. El is the singular and Elohim is the plural. So this plurality of deity is abbreviated with the Aleph. Now, this Elohim is not only the plurality of God, but it's the creative and empowering aspect of the deity. Now then, as well as standing for Elohim, interestingly enough, and nobody really knows why, but the Aleph also stands for Yud He Vav He, the name of God, which has no Aleph in it. But it stands for that, and Yud He Vav He is not only the name of God, but it is the personal, covenantal aspect of God who protects and cares for His people because He is duty bound to do so to all who are in a blood covenant relationship with Him. Okay? That's very important to understand. In a blood covenant, when I covenant with you, I am duty bound by my covenant. I swear and I promise to do certain things within the confines of that covenant. If you call for help, I am duty bound to come and assist you. This is the type of relationship that is represented by the Aleph in Yud He Vav He. Now then, so Adam actually means the creative and empowering and covenantal blood of God made flesh. That's what God created. Adam was created to be an exact duplication in kind of the creative, empowering God who personally takes an interest in all aspects of our lives. And that's what you see Him doing in the garden with Adam. Everything is working within the confines of that relationship. Now let me ask you a question. Does knowing what Adam really means sound better than people telling you, well, Adam just means red dirt? I mean, what good does knowing we're red dirt do us? Nothing. It makes us think that we're some pile, just a heap of red dirt that's just crawling around on our bellies out here. It doesn't do anything to give us an awareness of the relationship going on between man and God. So hopefully now that you understand what this word means, you can see that we were created to be authoritative. Because we're created to be in reflection of He who is totally authoritative. We're to be a powerful force upon the earth, to be creative, to be a powerful generating force for good. We are to be a covenant-keeping man and woman who are unified in purpose, both as a couple and unified with our Creator. You know, Danielle asked me a question. She goes, well, why do we see in the Bible, men having multiple wives? Well, we do because of the hardness of men's hearts. Jesus even said, from the beginning it was not so. Okay? God will honor certain laws of men. And back then they just had this kind of weird set of laws, and men could take care of more than one woman. I think it was very stupid because I can't take care of one. And that's just, kind of the way it is. But from the beginning, it was not so, because it says the two become one. Okay? It doesn't say the 3, 4, 5, 10, or 20 become one. So we can see that indeed we are created to be special. We have a special relationship with our Creator because none of the other animals were created to be an exact duplication in kind of the Creator. I would tremble to think that I'm eating God when I have a steak. There are people who do think they're eating God when they eat a steak because they think that is either God or might be one of their relatives reincarnated as a steak. But when we see what the Bible is really telling us, we understand that it's not the creatures out here who were created special, but it was man who was created special and had the relationship with God in a blood covenant manner. The animals didn't enjoy that. They were put here for us to utilize and protect in some manner. We are not some insignificant blob of dirt or goo that has arose out of the primordial ooze. That is not who we are. Each and every one of us is tremendously important, and once we recognize our Creator and the covenant with Him, we can then become unified in His purposes within our own lives. We become authoritative. Now let me pose a question to you. Are miracles real? Y'all have any concept? Are they real? Okay, there's kind of a consensus that miracles are real. How many have you seen a miracle? Okay. Okay, several of you shaking your hand. Okay. What constitutes a miracle? It's a miracle that we can get our eyesight back with surgery. I consider that a miracle, because without that, Ruth couldn't see. Okay? There are manifest miracles where you actually see the presence of God manifest before you. But do we have to see them physically for them to exist? If we haven't seen one, it doesn't mean that they don't exist. Now, this is the same kind of issue that I asked you if Pluto is real. Do y'all believe Pluto is real? It's something up in the sky. How many of you have ever been there? How many of you have ever looked in a telescope and said, oh, look, there is Pluto? I wouldn't know Pluto at all. I mean, there's 10 zillion lights in the sky. I wouldn't know which one's Pluto if I was looking at it. But that doesn't mean it doesn't exist. Somewhere in the realm of our solar system, it exists. And it's the same for miracles. And we need to realize that it is unlike trying to get to Pluto, because we'll never experience that type of an experience in our lifetime. Maybe sometime God will make space travel to Pluto available for us, but it's not here yet. But God and His miracles are for real. The problem is we have to intersect with God. Okay? The children of Israel, they wandered for 40 years out in the desert. Where was their God? He was in a pillar of fire or a pillar of smoke, leading them. He was sitting between the cherubim, where they carried. He was there with them. He had intersected with their nation and that people. Now the people, when they got to Mount Sinai, they all ran back and hid behind the rocks. They were busy washing their underwear and told Moses to go ahead and you go up on that mountain because it was really scary, and you be one with God and you unify with Him while we stay here and try to scrub our shorts. We have to understand that God wants to intersect in our life. But we have to take our life and put it over here where God is. Because our life and God's life may be on two separate paths. And God doesn't change His path because we don't want to. We have to find God's path and put ourselves in the direct line of God's path. And then we understand authority. We have to be able to get our life in tune with God and His desires, and at that point our life really does intersect with God. It intersects with His needs and His desires for us in our life, both spiritually and physically. We have to understand this, because if we really want to understand the authority of the believer, we have to position ourselves to meet God where He is operating. Now, there's a lot of churches out here, God isn't there. It's deader than a hammer, and you walk in and you would never find God if He was hiding in the closet. A friend of mine had gone to the Methodist Church all his life up in Oklahoma. And he said he had no idea who God was or what His authority was within God. And finally, one day, someone walked him through a prayer of salvation, and it took him 30 minutes to find the Bible, and they were under the coffee machine covered with dust because nobody had ever pulled one out. That's sad. Nowhere in the Bible does it say that God stopped all creating. It simply says He Shabbated. You know what the word Shabbat is? On the seventh day, we're supposed to observe the Sabbath day. Okay. It says He rested or desisted from His certain or particular work that was preparing the earth. Okay? We have to understand how all of these little parts and pieces fit together to understand our authority. It doesn't just say He stopped creating. So God's never created anything from then to now. Well, that's just stupid. Did you know that the Jews actually believe that God continues to speak, and that without His continuing to speak, that the entire cosmos would basically cease to exist? And when you think about it, that's a really interesting concept. God continually speaks. And when you think about the fact that His Word did what? Became flesh. And it dwelt among us, and that living Word did what? It spoke life to people. Told people to come out of the grave, to be healed, to do all manner of things that are called miracles. And a miracle is simply an event that is a manifestation of God's living presence for people to see. He's living. And if God speaks, He creates by virtue of His Word. That's how Jesus can say what to Satan? He quotes the Word, which is creative and alive and authoritative. If the Word of God has been made flesh, it is creative. So Jesus is still creating because He still lives as the living Word. So when we have to go to Jesus and intersect our powerless lives with the power-filled life of Jesus, We have to understand that He has been granted all power and authority over sin and death. We have to intersect with Jesus. He has been granted all this power and authority, so we have to move from over here to over here. A life of powerlessness, we have to unify with the life of Him who is alive and has overcome all sin and death. When we do this, when we recognize who Jesus is and the power and authority He can have in our life, then Isaiah 40, 31 through 33 can kick in, and we can experience the power and authority of Jesus as it operates in and through our lives. What does Isaiah 40 say? You may want to turn there and take a look at it, because it is very, very important. I think I've spoken on this several times before. But Isaiah 40, in English, again, has totally missed it. It's actually 29 through 31, excuse me. It says, He gives power to the faint, and to them that have no might He increases strength. Even the youth shall faint and be weary, and the young men shall utterly fall. But they that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength, and they shall mount up with wings as eagles. They shall run and not be weary, and they shall walk and not faint. Doesn't say anything important to us. But in Hebrew, again, it says, But they that eagerly await for and expect it to come, the Messiah, shall exchange power. They will arise with strength as eagles. They shall run as messengers and not tire in fruitless work, and shall walk righteously and not grow weary in unrighteousness. In other words, when we connect with the living Word, we exchange our non-authority with the authority of Him who has all authority. And then we are able to do what? It says we are able to go out and not tire in fruitless work and unrighteousness. That means we're going to be creative. We're going to be helping and assisting in righteous work. That's what we're created for and created to be. So you see, the true authority of the believer began at creation with who we were created to be, but we lost it. We lost it in the garden when man and woman decided to eat of the covenantal tree, the blood covenantal tree of Hasatan. We have to understand that those two trees were not God's two trees. He had one, the tree of life, and Hasatan had the other, the tree of the knowledge of the difference between good and evil. Because once you ate of it, you were instantly aware of the difference of your life now and the way it was. It was extended back to us as we reunify with Jesus in His death, burial, and resurrection. As we accept Jesus We say, I'm a sinner, I need forgiveness of my sin, and I am buried with Him in His death, burial, and resurrection. When I arise, I am instantly under covenant with Jesus and all the authority that that entails. When we choose to follow God and Jesus, then we have authority as believers. When we make the conscious decision to quit believing a lie, the lie that we are the center of the universe, and that the universe revolves around us, then we are able to move and intersect with God, and we can begin to experience the true authority of the believer. Now, next week, I'm going to be talking about the authority of the believer and inheriting from God, because that's a whole different ball game. But as believers, if we can't understand that God has created us special, and He loves us enough that He wants to have this intimate relationship with us, we can never intersect with God. Because we'll always be hiding under a table somewhere, thinking God's over here on Mount Olympus throwing lightning bolts out here on us, trying to hurt us. No, God's not trying to hurt us. He's trying to help us. We have to love God enough. We have to admire what Jesus did enough to say, I want to intersect with my God. I want to have a relationship with Him. I want to be all the person that God has for me to be. Kind of like the old army thing, be all you can be. But we can only be all we can be when we're unified within the power and authority of Christ. Now, is there anybody here that wants prayer for a greater relationship with Christ? We'd love to pray with you. Is there anybody here that just simply needs prayer for any problem? Go ahead.
No, just the first one.
What?
Great relationship. Everybody always needs one.
All right. Well, let's come down here and we'll pray for you.
I gotta move.
TJ, why don't you scoot over here? TJ doesn't have to stand up.
Okay.